Looks like our newest member this week for the April 9th, 2017 edition of the Mac Forum video chat. It looks like, let's just take a quick look, our newest member looks like Lightning Ganth, and hope that they will, that's today's birthday. Our newest member is John Dev, and I hope that they and all of our new members find some interesting information in the forum this week. Speaking of interesting forum information, we're going to take a look here, and we're going to start with a thread that was started by member Michelangelo with regard to issues with changing Apple ID passwords. And one particular issue with it not working. It goes into some degree of detail here about the steps that were taken to change passwords. One of the reasons I linked to this thread is that it emphasizes not only the need to change those passwords frequently, but also how easy it is to forget which places you need to change the password for your Apple accounts. Apple IDs and passwords are so integrated now into the way things work with the App Store, the iTunes Music Store, with your iOS devices using the Apple ID. iCloud uses the Apple ID. iMessage can use the Apple ID. All of those different things, along with, in some cases, if you're a member of the Mac discussion board, that Apple ID as well. So all of these things come into play for your Apple ID being used, and it's easy to forget sometimes how many different things you have connected to your Apple ID. So this is a good reminder about that. That's part of the reason I included this thread. Also, this week, another one that comes up that's kind of interesting, another thread from our forum. Member Rod Sprague points us to a How To Geek article on how to optimize Safari's privacy settings to get the most out of that. It's a pretty straightforward and explanatory article. Most of the preferences that you're going to be dealing with when it comes to that will deal with both with security here and also the privacy settings in preferences. As you can see, these control which website data you want saved, ask websites not to track you, and a number of other things. Also here you have some control over what you want to autofill, saving passwords, etc., etc., etc. All of these things are issues that you might want to address in Safari and set to preferences that you prefer. The How To Geek article is pretty self-explanatory. Thanks to Rod for his finding that article for us and linking to it. Also, in our forum this week, that was it as far as the forum roundup, kind of short forum roundup. There were other things going on in the forum, obviously, this week, but this is the one that stuck in my head as far as the two things that really will be most useful this week. I want to take a minute. As you can see, what I've got up on my screen now is an article from our old buddy Kirk McLaren. He's a senior contributor at Macworld. Now, this article is from 2012, but the information that it covers is still relevant. It has to do with services. Now, services have been around the macOS for a while, and it's a feature that he considers one of the perhaps the most little-known time-saving feature in the macOS, and that is these single-feature commands that you can access from a special services menu or from a context menu. let me just give you an idea. From a contextual menu, you'll see some things specific to this, to what you're doing at the time. For example, I have a word highlighted right there. I can copy that word. I can share it. I can do some various speech-related functions. I can block ads, disable click-to plugin, and look down here in this contextual menu are some services. I can send this to a clipping. I can use Spotlight. I can summarize it, and I'll show you that in just a second. Let's just give you an example of something of this in action. I'm going to take this paragraph, and one of the services that's available to me is Summarize. I had intended to talk about this last week. It can give me a summary of the article, and as you can see right now, I've got it set to 100%, and that means that it'll take everything in that article, in that little section that I have selected. What if I cut it down? Notice, look at the level of how the level of detail changes as I adjust things. Okay, now it's not quite as noticeable there because I haven't selected the entire article, but if I did, just real quickly, I'm going to show you what that does. I've selected a larger segment of the article here, and let's go down and look at that Summarize service and see what it does. Now here you've got quite a bit of detail, but again, if I start shrinking, notice what was the entire article is now cut down to one paragraph. This comes in really handy sometimes. I used to use it, and then of course you can save it if you want to, paste it out into other applications. I used to use this quite a bit as I was prepping for the show, and I may go back to using it again. You can adjust the complexity, but as you can see, that's part of the services menu. Services are little snippets, and what you can do varies based on what's selected. As you can see in that, when I have text selected, the services menu is going to show me things that I can do that are text related. Send it to Notebook, send it to Spotlight, Nisys document if you have Nisys Writer. But also, look at this. In my services menu in Safari, I also have a series of services that I created. Now look, because I've got text selected, I can add it to iTunes as a spoken track. I can make a new sticky note. And then down here, I've got some services that I created with AppleScript. Go back 30 seconds, go backwards 1 minute, go forward 30 seconds in a track, go forward 1 minute, play the previous track, speak the track name. Why would I have these things? Well, I find that sometimes when I'm listening to something, I need to be able to go back or go forward, and I needed a quick way to do it, so I could add to it. If I had selected a graphic file, the services that are available would be different. Let's just take a quick look here. Let's go down into iTunes, and I didn't have this demo up and set to go. But you can see, all right, if I click on one of my album covers and I go down, I see things related to iTunes. I don't see a whole lot in the way of services here. That means I don't have a lot installed. But my services that I created are still up here in the menu, as you can see. And look, I've got a few things that weren't here before. My speak tracks are still there. But I've got a service for Activity Monitor. I've got a service to search for media. If I give it a URL, I have a URL in place. I can search for media at that URL. Notice how that services menu changed. That's what makes it so productive. It changes based in large part upon what you are doing. And that's one of the reasons Kurt considers it so valuable and so underused a service, and I happen to agree with him. That article that I linked to will have a lot of information about services, how to use them, how to add more, what they might be useful for, so I'll link to that for you. Also, I wanted to point out more along the lines, as you know, I usually turn to Kirk McLaren for our audio and iTunes questions. This is something that I'm going to link to. He has 10 different ways to connect your computer to a stereo. This will depend in part on what connections that you have available to you on the stereo side of things, as well as what you have available to you on your Mac. Now, I linked to it because of two things. One, if you have an older stereo that doesn't have digital connections like Toslink and HDMI, you can still connect most Macs, most iPhones, iPads, etc. to the stereo using a 1/8 mini plug, that's the headphone size jack, to plug into the device. And the other end of the cable will have two RCA connectors that you plug into the stereo. Now, why did I mention that one? First of all, that works with just about anything. But the other thing I want you to know about this one and be aware of, and he mentions it in the very first paragraph of this article. If you make this type of connection, you are making an analog connection. What that means is that if you are connecting just basically stereo audio, you're in pretty decent shape. But if you're connecting something that uses surround sound, 5.1 audio or 7.1 surround sound, anything with surround sound, any movie with a digital audio track, you're not getting true surround sound if you plug in that way using a 1/8 mini plug and that analog connection. What he does mention are some of the other options that you have available. I, for example, have an option available to connect via HDMI. So when I send things to my computer, I actually have it connected two different ways. One, I have an HDMI connection between my computer and the stereo because they're in the same room. But I also have available to me sending it via AirPlay to my Apple TV connection, which is an HDMI connection between the Apple TV box and the TV set and stereo combination. So this is going to go into several different connection opportunities. As I say, he lists 10 different ones and the pros and cons of each one. And then down at the bottom of the article are several other audio-related bits and pieces of information that you might find interesting and to you. For example, just to throw this in as a bonus, this article here, which links to why you don't want the Apple TV 4 if you just want to stream audio, if you're not worried about streaming video. And the reason for that, I'll go ahead and tell you, is the Apple TV 4 does not have the Toslink connection, digital audio connection, that the Apple TV 3 does. So, yes, you can connect your Apple TV 4 to a stereo via HDMI, but if all you want to do is stream audio and you don't want a video connection, you can't really do it with the old Toslink cable like you could with the Apple TV 3. And that's why you're seeing some people keep their Apple TV 3s around to use in situations where they don't necessarily need to stream the video, they just want the audio. So that's something to keep in mind, but there's a lot of good information in that article. Also, and there you go, there is the article that discusses that in detail. I forgot that I had actually linked to that article, and as usual, I'll have everything that I talk about tonight will be in the show notes, although they may not go up until tomorrow. So stay tuned for that, boys and girls. Also, Kirk, the iTunes guy, has some issues dealing with some of the quirks in iTunes 12. Here he has some more questions about ripping individual audio tracks. In iTunes 12, the way you view CDs has changed just a little bit. It doesn't automatically show in the sidebar, but if you drag the tracks to the left edge of the window, the sidebar slides over. Okay? So this goes into some changes that have been made in iTunes 12 and some other quirks about it. I put that in there because I know some of you will use that and will be a little bit confused if you've just recently upgraded to iTunes 12. I haven't run into all of the quirks yet because I've been doing some really basic stuff with iTunes, just pretty much listening. Haven't tried importing anything new recently. All right. Next, Ask the iTunes Guy has some more information about iTunes 12.6 and the up next queue, how to clear that up, artwork, some artwork issues, visualizer issues, things of that nature that you may want to look at. How do you clear the up next cache if you don't want to see those tracks anymore? All good, very good information. So keep that in mind. I'll have links to that article as well. And that's going to just about do it for our iTunes tips from Kirk the iTunes Guy, our forum roundup. That pretty much does it for this week's show. It's kind of short. What I'll try to do, and if I get this done, it will be later in the week. I may do a little Automator tutorial on how to build your own services. I'll show you how I built the one to back up 30 seconds, to speak an audio track, the name of an audio track. I'll show you those Apple scripts that I built and how I connected those. And I made those available so that they're available all the time. So even if I've got, and the reason I did that is because sometimes I have iTunes running in the background playing music. I've got Safari or FaceTime or you name it in the foreground. I don't necessarily want to have to go to iTunes to see the information about what's running or anything like that, or to skip backward, skip forward. So I did a series of Apple scripts that did it, turn them into services so they're available no matter what program I'm in. As you can see right now, if I go to the Safari menu, go to services, all of these right here, beginning with the back 30 seconds, all the way down to speak audio track, are scripts that depend upon iTunes and tell me what's going on with iTunes. So I'll show you probably in a video this weekend. I'll do a short little video to show you how I built those and what you can do with them, some of the things that you can do to make it useful to you. And that's going to just about do it for this week, guys. No, it was kind of short. I hope you found the information really helpful. And I've enjoyed bringing this to you as usual on each Sunday evening. Next week, because it is Easter, I will try to do the show, but I'm going to do it on Monday. Look for it on Monday as opposed to Sunday night. I know that with it being Easter, a lot of you will have family commitments and things of that nature. So we'll do the show on Monday next week instead of the usual Sunday night. And until then, this is your host, Sylvester Rock, a.k.a. Sly Dude on the forum. I've enjoyed bringing you the information this week, and I'll see you next week, guys.